After my son died, my daughter became someone I no longer recognized. I still remember the smell of lilies filling the church that morning. Too many lilies. Their sweet scent clung to my throat until it made me sick. Everywhere I looked, there were white flowers and black clothes and people whispering words they thought would comfort me. He's in a better place now. At least he's not suffering anymore. Stay strong, Martha. Stay strong. As if a mother could bury her only son and somehow remain standing inside. I sat in the front pew clutching Harold's old handkerchief so tightly my fingers cramped. My son, Daniel, lay in the polished oak coffin only a few feet away from me, and no matter how many times I blinked, I still expected him to sit up laughing and say this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Daniel had always laughed during serious moments, even as a boy. When he was 10, he broke his arm falling from the apple tree behind our house. While I cried harder than he did in the hospital waiting room, he looked at me and grinned. "Mom," he whispered, "if they use a saw, make sure they leave me the good arm for video games." That was my Daniel. Even at 46 years old, with silver beginning to creep into his dark hair, he still made people laugh without trying. And now he was gone. Gone because a drunk driver ran a red light during a rainstorm. Gone because life could be cruel in ways no mother ever prepares for. I felt someone squeeze my shoulder gently. It was my daughter, Rebecca. "You should rest after this," she whispered. "You look exhausted." Her voice sounded soft and caring, but something about her eyes felt cold. Empty. I thought maybe grief had hollowed her out too. I didn't know then that grief changes people in different ways. Some people become softer. Others become strangers. The funeral blurred together after that. Faces came and went. Cousins I hadn't seen in years hugged me while crying into my shoulder. Old neighbors brought casseroles wrapped in foil. Daniel's co-workers stood near the back telling stories about him through tears. But the hardest moment came when Daniel's teenage daughter, Emma, walked up to the coffin. My granddaughter looked so small standing there alone. She touched the wood carefully, almost afraid of it. "Dad," she whispered. Just one word. But it shattered me. I covered my mouth to stop myself from sobbing out loud. Emma had inherited Daniel's eyes. The same warm brown eyes that always looked at people like they mattered. She stood there for nearly 5 minutes before Rebecca finally walked over and pulled her away. "That's enough," Rebecca murmured firmly. "You need to sit down." Emma glanced back toward the coffin. For one brief second I saw fear in her face. Not grief. Fear. At the time I thought I imagined it. I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. After the funeral, everyone gathered at Rebecca's house because it was larger than mine. People filled the living room balancing paper plates of food on their laps, while soft piano music played from invisible speakers. I sat near the window staring at the rain. Daniel used to love rainy days. When he was little, he'd run outside barefoot and splash through puddles while I yelled after him to come back before he caught pneumonia. "Life's too short to stay dry all the time, Mom," he'd shout. I smiled weakly at the memory until I overheard Rebecca speaking in the kitchen. "She's not handling this well," she whispered to someone. I recognized her husband Michael's voice. "Of course she isn't. She lost her son." "No, you don't understand," Rebecca snapped quietly. "She keeps forgetting things already. Today she asked me 3 times what time the funeral started. That's normal grief. It's more than grief." I froze. My chest tightened painfully. Forgetting things? I had asked twice, not 3 times, and only because my mind felt numb from shock. I told myself Rebecca was just worried about me. That's what daughters do. But when I looked through the kitchen doorway, I noticed her watching me. Not with concern, with calculation. The feeling crawled under my skin. Over the next few weeks, life became unbearably quiet. Every morning, I still woke up expecting Daniel's phone call. He called me every single day. Sometimes only for 5 minutes during his lunch break. Sometimes for an hour. Did you take your blood pressure pills? What are you eating? You watching those crime shows again? I'd laugh and tell him to stop treating me like an old woman. You are an old woman, he'd tease. Then he'd say softer, but you're my old woman. The silence after losing him felt unnatural, like the world itself had stopped breathing. Rebecca began visiting more often after the funeral. First, I appreciated it. She brought groceries, helped pay bills online, organized Daniel's memorial cards into neat little boxes. But slowly something shifted. One afternoon I came downstairs and found her opening my mail. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't even look guilty. "I'm helping you stay organized. I can open my own mail." "You say that now," she replied calmly. "But last week you forgot your doctor's appointment. It was rescheduled." She sighed the way tired mothers sigh at difficult children. "Mom, I'm just trying to help." The conversation left me unsettled for hours. That night I called Emma. Rebecca answered instead. "Emma's busy studying," she said quickly. "Oh, could you tell her Grandma called?" "I will." But Emma never called back. 2 days later I tried again. This time Emma answered. "Grandma." The relief in her voice startled me. "Oh, sweetheart, I miss you." "I miss you too." I smiled for the first time in days. But before I could say another word, Rebecca's voice cut sharply through the background. "Who are you talking to?" Emma hesitated. "Grandma." There was silence. Then Rebecca came on the line. "Mom, you really shouldn't overwhelm her right now." "Overwhelm her?" "I just called to talk. She's grieving. So am I." Rebecca exhaled slowly like she was losing patience. "Emma needs stability. I don't think emotional phone calls are helping." Emotional phone calls? As though loving my granddaughter was some kind of burden. "I'm her grandmother," I said quietly. "And I'm her mother." Then she hung up. I sat staring at the phone for a very long time. A month after Daniel's death, I drove to Emma's school to surprise her. I brought her favorite blueberry muffins from the bakery near my house. Daniel used to buy them for her every Friday morning before school. When I arrived, the secretary smiled politely. "I'm sorry," she said, "but Emma's mother instructed us not to release her to anyone else." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "She left strict pickup instructions after the accident." "I'm her grandmother." The secretary looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry." I walked back to my car feeling dizzy. Rebecca had never mentioned this. Why would she stop me from seeing Emma? I sat in the parking lot gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I noticed movement near the school entrance. Emma. She was walking toward a black SUV with her backpack hanging off one shoulder. I got out of the car immediately. "Emma." Her face lit up when she saw me. "Grandma." She started running toward me, but Rebecca stepped out of the driver's side. "Emma," she said sharply. My granddaughter stopped instantly. The fear returned to her face. That same fear I'd seen at the funeral. Rebecca walked toward me slowly. "You shouldn't be here. I brought muffins." Emma stared longingly at the bakery box in my hands. For years, those muffins had been our little tradition. Rebecca crossed her arms. "You're confusing her." "How is visiting my granddaughter confusing?" "She needs routine. She needs family. She has family." The coldness in Rebecca's voice shocked me. I looked at Emma. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Before she could answer, Rebecca spoke. "Get in the car, Emma." "But Mom." "Now." Emma flinched. Actually flinched. Something inside me turned cold. My daughter had always been strict, even as a teenager. But this felt different. Harder. Meaner. Emma slowly took the muffin box from my hands. "Thank you, Grandma," she whispered. Rebecca opened the SUV door. Then just before Emma climbed inside, she looked back at me and mouthed 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Please don't leave me." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying those words in my mind. Please don't leave me. What did she mean? Was Rebecca hurting her? No, that was impossible. Rebecca could be controlling, yes, difficult sometimes, but she was still Emma's mother, still my daughter. At 3 in the morning, I finally drifted into restless sleep and dreamed of Daniel. He stood in our old kitchen wearing the denim jacket he loved in college. "Mom," he said softly. I reached for him immediately. "Danny." But his face looked serious. "Watch Emma." Then the dream ended. I woke up trembling. The next week, Rebecca started talking about selling my house. "You shouldn't live alone anymore," she said casually while washing dishes. "I've lived alone since your father died." That was different. "How? You're older now." I stared at her. "I'm 72, not helpless." She turned off the water slowly. "You left the stove on yesterday." "I did not." "You did." For a second, doubt flickered through me. Had I? No. I clearly remembered turning it off after making tea. Rebecca dried her hands carefully. "Mom, I think the stress is affecting your memory more than you realize." The way she said it terrified me. Gentle, patient, convincing, like she was building a story brick by brick. And suddenly I remembered the conversation at the funeral. She keeps forgetting things already. My stomach tightened. That evening, I checked the stove 3 separate times before bed, just to make sure. A few days later, my neighbor Gloria knocked on my door. "You okay?" she asked immediately. "Yes, why?" She hesitated. "I saw Rebecca outside yesterday telling someone you were getting dementia." I felt the room tilt slightly. "What?" She was talking to Mrs. Collins from across the street. I sat down heavily. "No, there must be some mistake." Gloria frowned. "She said you were getting confused and forgetting people." A terrible silence filled the room. Then Gloria reached for my hand. "Martha, are you?" The question hurt more than I expected, because for the first time, I wasn't completely sure. Maybe grief really was making me forgetful. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. And if I was, who would protect Emma? That night, my phone rang after midnight. I answered groggily. "Hello." Silence. Then a tiny whisper. "Grandma." It was Emma. "Emma? Honey, what's wrong?" Her breathing sounded shaky. "I miss Dad." Tears filled my eyes instantly. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I heard Mom talking about you again." My grip tightened on the phone. "What did she say?" Emma hesitated, then whispered. "She said soon nobody will believe you anymore." My entire body went still. Before I could respond, another voice suddenly shouted in the background. "Emma!" The line disconnected. I stared into the darkness with my heart pounding violently. And for the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of my own daughter. I didn't sleep after Emma's phone call. I sat in my living room until sunrise with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and the cordless phone resting in my lap. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every passing car sounded too loud in the silence. She said soon nobody will believe you anymore. Those words kept echoing through my mind. I tried to make sense of them, but every explanation felt worse than the last. Maybe Rebecca was overwhelmed with grief. Maybe she was saying things she didn't mean. Maybe Emma misunderstood. But deep down, beneath all the excuses I desperately wanted to believe, another thought was growing. What if my daughter was trying to erase me from this family? At 7 in the morning, I made coffee and burned the toast because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Daniel used to tease me about my nervous habits. "Mom, you react to stress like the world's ending." Maybe he was right, but the world had ended. At least mine had. And now something terrible was happening to the only piece of Daniel I had left. Around noon, Rebecca arrived unannounced. She walked into the kitchen carrying grocery bags like nothing had happened. You really need to start locking your front door, she said casually. I stared at her carefully. Did she know Emma had called me? Did she know what Emma said? Rebecca unpacked vegetables slowly while humming to herself. Her calmness unsettled me more than anger would have. You look tired, she remarked. I didn't sleep. You should ask your doctor about stronger medication. I stiffened. I don't need medication. For anxiety, maybe. Or memory support. There it was again. Memory. Always memory. She slipped the word into conversation so naturally that it almost sounded caring. I took a slow breath. Emma called me last night. Rebecca's hands paused for only half a second before continuing. Did she? Yes. She misses her father. So do I. Rebecca shut the refrigerator door gently. Mom, I know you mean well, but you need to stop depending on Emma emotionally. I stared at her in disbelief. She's my granddaughter. She's also a grieving child. And I'm a grieving mother. My voice cracked louder than I intended. For the first time, Rebecca looked irritated. You think you're the only one hurting? No, because ever since Daniel died, all you talk about is your pain. The accusation stunned me silent. Rebecca rubbed her forehead dramatically. I'm trying to hold this family together while you make everything harder. How? You confuse Emma. I love her. You smother her. The cruelty in her tone hit me like a slap. I stood slowly from the kitchen table. I don't recognize you anymore. For one brief second, something dark flashed across her face. Then it disappeared behind a soft, pitying smile. That's exactly what worries me. My stomach dropped. She wanted me angry, upset, emotional, because emotional people sound unstable, and unstable people are easier to dismiss. Suddenly, I understood what Emma meant. Soon nobody will believe you anymore. Rebecca wasn't losing control accidentally. She was building a case. After she left, I found myself checking every room in the house. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid she'd hidden something. Maybe I was afraid she'd taken something. The paranoia embarrassed me, but I couldn't stop. In the laundry room, everything looked normal. In the bathroom, normal. But when I opened the drawer beside my bed, my stomach tightened. My jewelry box was slightly crooked. Tiny detail. Most people wouldn't notice. But I did. Because Daniel gave me that jewelry box after his first paycheck at 16 years old. Now you can store all your riches, he joked while handing it to me. I opened the box carefully. Nothing appeared missing. Still unease crawled through me. I checked the rest of the drawer, then froze. My bank statements were gone. I emptied the entire drawer onto the bed. Old receipts, photographs, birthday cards, but no bank statements. I sat down heavily. Had I moved them? Forgotten? For nearly an hour I searched the entire house. Finally, I found them inside a kitchen cabinet behind the cereal boxes. I stood there staring at them in confusion. Why would I put them there? I couldn't remember doing it, and that terrified me. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe grief was destroying my memory. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. At that exact moment, the phone rang. It was Gloria. Martha, honey, are you all right? I wiped my face quickly. Yes. You don't sound all right. I hesitated, then quietly asked, Gloria, do you think I'm losing my mind? Silence. Painful silence. Finally, she answered carefully. No. But I think grief can make us question ourselves. I sank into the kitchen chair. I found important papers in strange places. Have you had anyone else in the house? Immediately, Rebecca's face flashed through my mind. No, I whispered automatically, but the lie felt heavy. That weekend was Daniel's birthday. His 47th, the first birthday without him. I baked his favorite chocolate cake even though nobody was coming over. I just couldn't bear the thought of the day passing unnoticed. As the cake cooled on the counter, I found myself remembering another birthday long ago. Daniel at 7 years old, grinning with missing front teeth while wearing a paper pirate hat. Mom! Rebecca stole my frosting flower. Rebecca crossed her tiny arms. He got 2 flowers already. You ate yours. You dropped yours. Their arguments used to fill this house with life. Now the silence pressed against my ears until it hurt. Around 6 in the evening there was a knock at the door. I opened it expecting Gloria. Instead I found Emma standing there alone. Rain soaked her hoodie. Emma! Before I could say another word, she threw herself into my arms. I held her tightly, stunned. Oh my God, sweetheart, what happened? She doesn't know I'm here, Emma whispered. Fear shot through me. What do you mean? I told Mom I was studying at Chloe's house. I quickly pulled her inside. She looked exhausted. Pale shadows circled her eyes like bruises. When's the last time you ate? I asked. Emma shrugged. That answer alone broke my heart. I warmed soup while she sat quietly at the kitchen table staring at Daniel's birthday cake. He loved your cakes, she whispered. I know. Tears filled her eyes instantly. He used to sing stupid birthday songs on purpose just to embarrass me. I laughed softly through my own tears. That sounds like your father. Emma smiled weakly. For a few precious minutes it felt normal again, like grief hadn't shattered everything. Then Emma spoke very quietly. Mom hates you now. The spoon slipped from my fingers into the sink. No, she doesn't. She says you're trying to replace Dad. I turned slowly toward her. What? She says you want me to love you more than her. My chest tightened painfully. Oh, sweetheart. Emma's voice trembled. She says you blame her for Dad dying. That's not true. I know. But she didn't sound certain. That frightened me most. Rebecca was poisoning her slowly. Tiny lies. Tiny doubts. Tiny manipulations. The kind that grow quietly until they become truth. I sat beside Emma and held her cold hands. Listen to me carefully. I could never hate your mother. Emma looked down. She yells a lot now. What kind of yelling? She gets angry when I talk about Dad too much. My stomach twisted. Why? She says crying won't bring him back. I closed my eyes briefly. Daniel had only been gone 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And already Emma was learning to hide her grief. Suddenly headlights flashed through the front window. Emma's entire body stiffened. She's here. Panic exploded across her face. Before I could react, Rebecca pounded on the front door. Emma! The anger in her voice made me jump. I opened the door slowly. Rebecca stormed inside, drenched from the rain. What the hell were you thinking? She snapped at Emma. I just wanted to see Grandma. You lied to me. Emma immediately shrank into herself. I stepped between them instinctively. Don't yell at her. Rebecca turned toward me with blazing eyes. You stay out of this. She's grieving. And you're making it worse. Her voice echoed through the house. Emma flinched again. That tiny movement snapped something inside me. Stop doing that, I said quietly. Rebecca blinked. Doing what? Making her afraid of you. The room fell silent. For one dangerous moment, Rebecca looked completely exposed, like her mask had slipped. Then tears suddenly filled her eyes. I can't believe this, she whispered shakily. I stared at her in confusion. You think I'm abusing my daughter? I didn't say that. But you implied it. Rebecca turned toward Emma dramatically. You hear this? After everything I've done for this family. Emma looked trapped between us. I didn't mean, I began. No, Rebecca interrupted coldly. You meant exactly that. Then she grabbed Emma's arm. We're leaving. Emma looked at me helplessly as Rebecca pulled her toward the door. Grandma! It's okay, I said quickly, though nothing felt okay anymore. At the doorway, Rebecca stopped. Without turning around, she spoke quietly. "You know what the saddest part is, Mom?" I waited. "Daniel would be disgusted by your behavior." Then she walked out into the storm with Emma, and I collapsed into a chair, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. 3 days later, I received a phone call from my bank. "Mrs. Whitmore," the woman said politely, "we noticed unusual withdrawal attempts on your account." My blood ran cold. What kind of attempts? There was an inquiry regarding transfer authorization. I didn't authorize anything. The woman hesitated. "The caller claimed to be your daughter." My hand tightened around the phone. "What?" "She stated she helps manage your finances due to cognitive decline." I couldn't speak. The room blurred around me. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the banker continued gently. "We flagged it because security answers were incomplete." After hanging up, I sat frozen for nearly 10 minutes. Cognitive decline. Rebecca was telling people I was mentally unstable. Not just neighbors. Banks. Schools. Who else? Doctors? Friends? Family? Suddenly, every strange interaction over the past month began rearranging itself in my mind like puzzle pieces finally fitting together. The pitying looks. The cautious questions. The hesitation in people's voices. Rebecca had been preparing this quietly for weeks. Maybe longer. And worst of all, it was working. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. Rainwater still covered the fresh dirt above Daniel's grave. I stood there trembling beneath my umbrella. "You always protected us," I whispered. Wind rustled through the trees softly. "I don't know how to fix this, Danny." Tears slid down my cheeks. "She's taking Emma away from me." My voice cracked completely. And maybe she's right. The confession shattered something inside me. Maybe I was confused. Maybe grief had damaged me. Maybe I really was becoming unstable. I stared at my son's name carved into stone. Then suddenly I remembered something. 2 years earlier, Daniel sat with me at this exact cemetery after visiting his father's grave. "Mom," he said carefully, "if anything ever happens to me." I laughed immediately. "Don't start. I'm serious. You're 45, not 90. But Daniel looked strangely worried that day. "If anything happens, promise me you'll watch out for Emma." I smiled. "Of course. No matter what." At the time, I thought he was just being protective. Now, standing over his grave, I realized how afraid he must have been. And for the first time, a horrifying question entered my mind. What if Daniel already knew who Rebecca really was? That night, when I returned home, my front door was slightly open. Just an inch. My heart slammed against my ribs. I knew I had locked it. Slowly, I stepped inside. The living room looked untouched. Kitchen normal. Hallway normal. Then I noticed my bedroom light glowing faintly beneath the door. I never left lights on. Fear crawled through my chest. I grabbed the fireplace poker near the mantel and pushed the bedroom door open. No one was there. But my drawers had been emptied onto the floor. Clothes scattered everywhere. Jewelry box open. Photo albums overturned. Someone had searched my room. My knees nearly gave out. Then I saw it. One framed photograph lying cracked beside the bed. A picture of Daniel and Emma at the beach. And across the broken glass, written in red lipstick, were 4 words. "Let him go or else." For a long time, I simply stood there staring at the broken photograph. Rain tapped softly against the bedroom windows while the red lipstick letters seemed to bleed across the shattered glass. "Let him go or else." My breathing became shallow. At 72 years old, I had lived through many terrible things. I buried my husband after 38 years of marriage. I watched cancer hollow out my younger sister until she no longer recognized her own children. I survived surgeries, heartbreak, loneliness. But I had never felt fear like this. Not because someone broke into my house. Because deep down, I already knew who had done it. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the fireplace poker. "No," I whispered aloud. I didn't want to believe it. Not Rebecca. Not my daughter. Even after everything, some stubborn part of my heart still clung to the little girl she once was. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The little girl who cried for 2 days after finding a dead bird in the yard, because she didn't want it to be lonely. Where had that child gone? And what had replaced her? I forced myself to call the police. The officer who arrived was young enough to be my grandson. He walked through the bedroom carefully while taking notes. "Was anything stolen?" he asked. "I don't know. Do you have any suspects?" The question lodged in my throat. If I said Rebecca's name aloud, everything would become real. "I'm not sure," I answered weakly. The officer nodded politely, but I could tell he didn't take the situation seriously. To him, it probably looked like a simple burglary. Then he glanced toward the lipstick writing. Could be kids messing around. Kids. I almost laughed. There was nothing childish about those words. They were a warning. And warnings come from people who believe they have power. Before leaving, the officer handed me a card. "Call us if you notice anything else missing." I thanked him quietly. But after he left, I locked every door in the house and sat awake all night holding Daniel's old baseball bat across my lap like a frightened child. The next morning, Rebecca called. Her voice sounded sugary sweet. "Morning, Mom." I closed my eyes. Had she done it herself? Or sent someone? "I had a break-in last night," I said carefully. Silence. Then, "Oh no. Are you all right?" Too smooth. Too controlled. My bedroom was trashed. "That's terrible." I waited. Nothing. No surprise. No outrage. No questions. Just calmness. Then she added softly, "This is exactly why you shouldn't live alone." I spread through my chest. "You think I imagined it?" "Of course not. But I think you're vulnerable right now." There it was again. Vulnerable. Confused. Forgetful. Every word carefully chosen. Every word painting me weaker and weaker. I called the police. For the first time, Rebecca hesitated. Only for a second. But I heard it. Then her voice returned, lighter than before. "Well, hopefully they find whoever did it." Whoever. As if she didn't already know. After hanging up, I walked into the kitchen and noticed something strange. The back window above the sink was unlocked. I never unlocked that window. Slowly I looked closer. Tiny scratches marked the latch. Someone had forced it open from outside. My stomach tightened. This wasn't random. Whoever entered my house knew exactly where to go. My bedroom. My photographs. My memories. Especially Daniel. I suddenly remembered something else. 3 weeks earlier, Rebecca had asked me for a spare key, in case of emergencies. I had refused. She looked irritated afterward. At the time I thought nothing of it. Now every interaction felt poisoned. Around noon, Gloria came over carrying soup. The moment she saw my face, her expression changed. What happened? I told her everything. The break-in. The message. The police. By the time I finished, Gloria looked horrified. "Martha," she whispered, "you need to stay somewhere else." "No. What if they come back?" I looked toward the hallway. "I can't leave Daniel's things." Gloria sat beside me carefully. Then she lowered her voice. "I need to ask you something." My chest tightened. "What? Has Rebecca always been like this?" I stared at her. "No." But even as I said it, old memories began surfacing. Tiny things I ignored for years. Rebecca lying as a child and crying so convincingly teachers always believed her. Rebecca turning friends against each other in high school. Rebecca smiling sweetly moments after saying something cruel. At the time I called it immaturity. Strong personality. Stubbornness. Mothers are experts at renaming dangerous things into harmless ones. Because the truth hurts too much. Gloria touched my hand gently. I think your daughter is trying to scare you. I swallowed hard. Why? Money maybe. Control. Emma. I shook my head slowly. She already has custody of Emma. Yes, Gloria said quietly. But you have something Rebecca doesn't. What? She knows Emma trusts you more. The words landed heavily between us. And suddenly, I remembered Emma whispering, "Please don't leave me." That evening, I found myself searching through old photo albums. Not for comfort, for answers. I sat on the living room floor surrounded by decades of memories. Rebecca at 5 years old wearing pigtails. Daniel teaching Emma to ride a bicycle. Family Christmas mornings. Beach vacations. Birthday parties. Normal moments. Happy moments. So where did everything go wrong? Then I found a photograph I hadn't seen in years. Daniel and Rebecca standing beside each other at my husband's funeral 15 years earlier. Daniel looked exhausted from grief. Rebecca looked furious. Not sad. Angry. The memory returned suddenly. After the funeral, Rebecca exploded because Harold's life insurance money went mostly toward paying Daniel's medical school debt from years earlier. "You always choose him," she screamed at me that night. "That isn't true. It's always Daniel first." I had forgotten that fight completely, or maybe I forced myself to forget, because afterward, Rebecca apologized while sobbing in my arms. "I didn't mean it, Mom. I'm grieving." And I believed her. I always believed her. Another memory surfaced. 3 years ago, Daniel quietly confessed something during Thanksgiving dinner cleanup. "Mom, Rebecca borrowed money from me again." "How much?" $10,000. I nearly dropped a plate. "Why?" "She says they're struggling. But Michael has a good job." Daniel hesitated strangely. "I don't think Michael knows." I frowned. "What do you mean?" But Daniel changed the subject immediately. At the time I let it go. Now my pulse quickened. What else had I ignored? That night, I opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were years of letters, cards, and keepsakes. At the very bottom, beneath old scarves, I found a sealed envelope with my name written in Daniel's handwriting. "Mom." My hands trembled. I didn't remember seeing it before. Slowly I opened it. Inside was a folded letter. The paper shook in my hands as I read. "Mom, if you're reading this, something probably happened to me before I got the chance to explain things properly. First, I need you to know I love you. None of this is your fault. Rebecca hasn't been herself for a long time. I've tried helping her financially and emotionally, but things keep getting worse. She lies constantly now. About money. About people. About everything. Michael called me crying 3 months ago because their savings disappeared. Rebecca blamed him, but later admitted she spent most of it online and hid the debt. She promised she'd get help, but I don't think she will. Mom, I'm scared for Emma. Not physically. Emotionally. Rebecca controls everything around her. Who she talks to. What she says, even what she feels. Emma once told me she's afraid to cry in front of her mother because it makes Mom angry. That sentence broke me. If anything happens to me, please stay close to Emma. She'll need someone safe. And Mom, be careful what Rebecca says about you. She's been telling people you're getting confused. I argued with her about it last month. I think she wants more control over your finances in the house. I'm sorry. I should have protected you better. Love always. Danny. By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Daniel knew. He knew everything. And he tried to warn me. But he died before he could. I pressed the letter against my chest and cried until my throat burned. Not just from grief anymore. From guilt. Because my son spent his final months trying to protect me while I kept making excuses for Rebecca. The next morning, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. Michael, Rebecca's husband. He looked terrible. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes, and rain soaked through his jacket. The moment I opened the door, he whispered, "She can't know I'm here." Fear tightened inside me immediately. I pulled him inside. "What's going on?" Michael looked around nervously before speaking. "She found out Emma called you." My stomach dropped. "What did she do?" "She took Emma's phone." Rage flared through me. "She's isolating her." "I know." Michael sat heavily on the couch and buried his face in his hands. "I don't know what to do anymore." I stared at him. "You know she broke into my house, don't you?" He froze. That silence told me everything. "Oh my God," I whispered. Michael looked shattered. "I didn't know she was coming here," he said quickly. "I swear. But I found the lipstick in her car this morning." The room tilted slightly. "She's completely out of control," he whispered. "Why?" Michael laughed bitterly. "You really don't know?" "Know what?" He looked at me with heartbreaking pity. "She thinks you loved Daniel more than her your entire life." Tears filled my eyes instantly. "That's not true. I believe you. But she doesn't." Michael rubbed his trembling hands together. "After Daniel died, something snapped. She became obsessed with Emma choosing her over you. She's a child, not a prize." "I know." His voice cracked. "Rebecca keeps saying if Emma loves you more, then she's lost everything." I sat down slowly. Years of jealousy hiding beneath the surface. Jealousy I never fully saw. Michael looked toward the window anxiously. "She's draining money fast. Credit cards, loans. I think she wants your house too." Daniel's letter flashed through my mind. "Control over your finances and the house." Michael swallowed hard. "And there's something else." My chest tightened. "What?" "She's planning to file paperwork saying you're mentally unfit." The room went completely silent. I felt every ounce of blood drain from my face. "What?" "She's already spoken to lawyers." My breathing became uneven. "No. She wants power of attorney." I stared at him in horror. "She wants to take everything." Michael looked away shamefully. "And if she succeeds, she can legally stop you from seeing Emma." A cold wave of terror crashed through me so hard I nearly couldn't breathe. Rebecca wasn't just trying to isolate me emotionally anymore. She was preparing to erase me completely. Then Michael said the one thing that truly terrified me. "She already convinced half the family you're unstable." That night, I sat alone in the dark clutching Daniel's letter. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, my house felt unfamiliar now. Unsafe. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked wrong. Then suddenly, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello." Heavy breathing. Then Emma's voice whispered through tears. "Grandma, Mom found Dad's letters." My heart stopped. "What letters?" "The ones he wrote about her." Ice spread through my veins. "She read them," Emma cried softly. "And now she says you're the reason he hated her." Then another voice suddenly exploded in the background. "Who are you talking to?" Emma gasped. The phone crashed loudly. And just before the line went dead, I heard Rebecca screaming, "She's stealing you from me too." After the phone call ended, I sat frozen in the darkness. Rain hammered the windows while Rebecca's voice echoed through my mind. "She's stealing you from me too. Not I'm protecting you. Not I'm scared. Stealing." As if love could belong to only one person. As if Emma were an object to possess instead of a grieving little girl who had already lost her father. I looked down at Daniel's letter resting in my lap. The paper had become wrinkled from my trembling hands. "Please stay close to Emma. She'll need someone safe." That was the last thing my son ever asked of me. And I realized then that fear could no longer guide me. Because if I stayed silent, Rebecca would destroy Emma the same way she was trying to destroy me. The next morning I called a lawyer. His name was Richard Lawson. An older man Daniel once helped during a medical emergency on an airplane. Richard refused to forget it afterward. Your son saved my life, he told me years ago. So if your family ever needs anything, you call me. When I explained everything over the phone, his voice became grave immediately. Mrs. Whitmore, he said carefully, do not sign anything your daughter gives you. I won't. And keep every message, every note, every letter. I glanced toward Daniel's letter on the kitchen table. I have proof she's been lying. Good. We may need it. The word may frighten me, because it meant this nightmare was becoming real. Richard asked me to come to his office that afternoon. When I arrived, he listened quietly while I told him everything from the beginning. Daniel's death, Rebecca's behavior, the lies about dementia, the bank call, the break-in, Emma. By the end, his face looked deeply troubled. This is coercive control, he said finally. I frowned. What does that mean? It means your daughter is systematically trying to isolate and destabilize both you and Emma. The clinical way he described it made me shiver. As if Rebecca's cruelty had become something measurable, something documented, something real. Richard adjusted his glasses carefully. The good news is she moved too quickly. What do you mean? She's made mistakes. He held up Daniel's letter. This alone raises serious concerns. Then he slid another paper toward me, a copy of preliminary guardianship paperwork, filed by Rebecca 2 days earlier. I stared at the words through blurred vision. Mental decline, memory impairment, unsafe living conditions. Felt like reading my own obituary. She says I'm dangerous to myself, I whispered. Richard's expression hardened. She has statements from neighbors and distant relatives. Of course she did. Weeks of whispering, weeks of lies, weeks of carefully planting doubt. I suddenly remembered Gloria asking, Martha, are you? My own friends had started questioning reality. Rebecca had been building this case for a long time. Then Richard leaned forward. But she underestimated something. What? You. I looked at him weakly. I don't feel very strong. You're stronger than she expected because you documented everything without realizing it. He pointed toward my purse. The police report, bank records, phone calls, witnesses, Daniel's letter. For the first time in weeks, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside me. Not much, but enough. That evening I returned home emotionally exhausted and found Emma sitting on my porch, alone. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. I rushed toward her immediately. Emma! She threw herself into my arms, shaking violently. She kicked Dad's bedroom door in, Emma sobbed. She was screaming and throwing things and saying everybody abandons her. It's okay, I whispered quickly. But it wasn't okay. Not even close. I guided Emma inside carefully. Her backpack was half open and stuffed carelessly with clothes. You ran away? Emma nodded miserably. I didn't know where else to go. The words nearly broke me. A child should never feel that unsafe with her own mother. I made her tea while she cried at the kitchen table, then quietly asked, Did your mom hurt you? Emma wiped her eyes immediately. No. She just... Her voice cracked. She gets scary now. I closed my eyes briefly. Scary. Such a small word for something so heavy. Emma stared at the floor. She keeps saying everybody leaves her because of you. My chest tightened painfully. I never wanted that. I know. But Rebecca didn't. Maybe she never would. Suddenly headlights swept across the curtains. Emma panicked instantly. She found me. A car door slammed outside. Then another. I looked through the window and froze. Rebecca wasn't alone. 2 police officers walked beside her toward the house. Oh God, Emma whispered. Pounding hit the front door. Mrs. Whitmore, a male voice called. Police department. My heart thundered. Richard's warning flashed through my mind. Do not sign anything. Slowly I opened the door. Rebecca stood there with tear-streaked cheeks and trembling hands, the perfect image of a terrified mother. "Mom," she whispered shakily, "thank God Emma's here." One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, your daughter reported that you may be experiencing mental confusion and took her child during an emotional episode." I stared at him in disbelief. "She came here herself." Rebecca wiped her eyes dramatically. "She's been disoriented lately," she told the officers softly. "After my brother died, she started imagining things." Imagining things. The words hit me like ice water. Emma suddenly stepped forward behind me. "That's not true." Rebecca's face changed instantly. "Emma, sweetheart." "No." The force in Emma's voice startled everyone. Tears streamed down her face. "You keep lying." Rebecca went pale. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Emma pointed at her mother with shaking hands. "You told everyone Grandma was crazy." "Emma, you broke into her house." Silence exploded across the porch. Rebecca stared at her daughter in horror. "I did that to protect us. You scared me." Emma's scream cracked through the night. Not anger. Pain. Pure pain. "I miss Dad and you keep acting like Grandma's the enemy." Rebecca staggered backward as if physically struck. The officers looked completely different now. Alert. Careful. One of them turned toward me. "Ma'am, perhaps everyone should calm down." "No," Emma cried. "You need to hear this." Then my granddaughter did something I will never forget for the rest of my life. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her phone. I recorded her. Rebecca's face drained of color. "You what?" Emma's hands trembled violently. I got scared. The officer took the phone carefully. "What's on here?" Emma looked at her mother through tears. "The truth." We sat in silence while the recording played. Rebecca's voice filled the room. Angry. Sharp. Unrecognizable. "She's trying to replace me." Then crashing sounds. More screaming. "I won't let that old woman take you too." An officer paused the recording halfway through. The room felt suffocating. Rebecca looked shattered now, but not in the way I expected. Not angry. Broken. She suddenly covered her face and started sobbing. Real sobbing. Not performative. Not manipulative. Just raw collapse. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. Nobody spoke. Rebecca looked at me through tears that seemed years old. "You always loved him more." The sentence landed softly this time. Not as an accusation. As a wound. I felt my own tears return instantly. "Oh, Rebecca, you smiled differently with him," she cried. "You laughed harder. You listened more." My heart broke completely then. Because beneath all the manipulation and cruelty, there was still a hurting little girl inside her. A little girl who spent her whole life believing she came second. And somehow, without realizing it, maybe I had helped create that pain. Not intentionally, but unintentionally hurts people too. "I loved you both," I whispered. "But not the same." I had no answer to that. Because love between children is never identical. One child needs softness. Another needs patience. Another needs understanding. Parents try their best. But sometimes our best still leaves scars. Rebecca sank into the couch trembling. "I hated him for dying," she whispered. The confession stunned the room silent. "Because after he died," her face twisted with grief, "everybody loved him even more." Tears slid down my cheeks. He was all anybody talked about. And suddenly I understood. Rebecca wasn't only grieving Daniel. She was competing with his memory. And losing. The officers didn't arrest Rebecca that night. Instead, they documented everything carefully and recommended emergency psychiatric evaluation after witnessing her breakdown. Michael arrived shortly afterward looking devastated. When he saw Rebecca curled on the couch sobbing uncontrollably, he began crying too. For the first time in months, The lies stopped. No manipulation. No performance. No pretending. Just grief. Ugly, destructive grief. Rebecca agreed to leave with Michael voluntarily for treatment evaluation after Emma quietly whispered, "I want my mom back." That sentence shattered everyone in the room, even Rebecca, especially Rebecca. Before leaving, she stopped in front of me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Did you really love me?" I cupped her face gently like I used to when she was little, with everything I had. Rebecca broke down completely after that, and as Michael guided her toward the door, she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Not evil, not monstrous, just deeply damaged. The following months were not easy. Healing never happens neatly. Rebecca began intensive therapy and was eventually diagnosed with severe complicated grief, depression, and untreated personality-related trauma that had worsened after Daniel's death. Some days she improved. Some days she disappeared into herself again. But slowly, very slowly, the anger loosened its grip. Emma stayed with me temporarily during the process. The house felt alive again with her there. Some nights we cried together. Some nights we laughed remembering Daniel's terrible dance moves and awful singing voice. And sometimes we simply sat quietly missing him. One evening near sunset, Emma and I visited Daniel's grave together. Spring flowers had begun blooming around the cemetery. Emma placed a small handwritten note beside the headstone. "What did you write?" I asked softly. She smiled sadly. "Just that we're gonna be okay." Tears filled my eyes. The wind moved gently through the trees as sunlight warmed the stone bearing my son's name. And for the first time since his death, I felt peace instead of only pain. Not because everything was fixed. Some things never fully heal. But because the truth survived. Love survived. And in the end, that was the last thing my son protected for us all.